Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanitanscha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur-Bhakta-Vrinda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama
Hare Krishna Gokulchandra Prabhu ji, Dandat Pranams.
Hare Krishna, Dandat Pranam Prabhuji.
If okay, can you turn on your video, Prabhuji? Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. Hare Krishna devotees, Dandat Pranams to all. We welcome all of you for the today's morning program Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, and today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Gokulchandra Prabhu, and Prabhu will continue the Srila Prabhupada lilamritha chapter 46. Title Preaching to America. First part we have completed last week, and Prabhu will continue the remaining. Over to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangulangayate girim yatkrupa tamaham vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandamadavam Shri Chaitanyameshwaram. Thank you, devotees, for giving me an opportunity to speak today. Share with you few drops from the unlimited glorious pastimes of our most beloved founder Acharya of ISKCON, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. For every parampara, it is very important for the followers and the adherents to understand the position of the preeminent Acharya in all his full glory and depth of dedication to the cause of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this regard, particularly our founder Acharya is Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. As a Parivrajaka Acharya, we all know that he has traveled extensively around the world, spreading Krishna consciousness. I would like to share one shloka from Srimad Bhagavatam 4th canto in this regard. Prabhuji, can I do screen share?
Yes, Prabhuji.
I'll do this. This is from the 30th chapter of the 4th canto, text 37. Tesham vicharatam padbhyam tirtanam pavanechaya Bhitasya kim na rocheta tavakanam samagamaha. Translation: Dear Lord, your personal associates, devotees, wander all over the world to purify even the holy places of pilgrimage. Is not such activity pleasing to those who are actually afraid of material existence? Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. There are two kinds of devotees. One is called Goshtyanandi and the other Bhajananandi. The word Bhajananandi refers to the devotee who does not move but remains in one place. Such a devotee is always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He chants the Mahamantra as taught by many acharyas and sometimes goes out for preaching work. The Goshtyanandi is one who desires to increase the number of devotees all over the world. He travels all over the world just to purify the world and the people residing in it. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised, Prithviti ache yata nagaradi grama sarvata prachara haiva mora nama. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted his followers to move all over the world to preach in every town and village. In the Chaitanya Sampradaya, those who strictly follow the principles of Lord Chaitanya must travel all over the world to preach the message of Lord Chaitanya, which is the same as preaching the words of Krishna, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The more the devotees preach the principles of Krishna Katha, the more people throughout the world will benefit. Devotees like the great sage Narada, who travel all over to preach, are called Goshtyanandi. Narada Muni is always wandering throughout the universe just to create different types of devotees. Narada even made a hunter a devotee. He also made Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlada devotees. Actually, all devotees are indebted to the great sage Narada, for he has wandered both in heaven and in hell. A devotee of the Lord is not even afraid of hell. He goes to preach the glories of the Lord everywhere, even in hell, because there is no distinction between heaven and hell for a devotee. Narayana paras sarve nakutaschana bibhyati svargapavargana rakeshu apitulyartha darshinaha. A pure devotee of Narayana is never afraid of going anywhere and everywhere. For him, heaven and hell are one and the same. Such devotees wandering all over the world deliver those who are actually afraid of this material existence. Some people are already disgusted with material existence, being confused and frustrated by material enjoyment, and some people who are intelligent are interested in understanding the Supreme Lord. Both may take advantage of the pure devotees who wanders throughout the world. When a pure devotee goes to a place of pilgrimage, he desires to purify that holy place of pilgrimage. Many sinful men bathe in the holy waters of the places of pilgrimage. They take their baths in the waters of the Ganges and Yamuna at places such as Prayag, Vrindavan, and Mathura. In this way, the sinful men are purified, but their sinful actions and reactions remain at the holy places of pilgrimage. When a devotee comes to take his bath at those places of pilgrimage, the sinful reactions left by the sinful man are neutralized by the devotees. Tirti kurvanti tirtani swantastena gadabrata. Because the devotee always carries the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, wherever he goes becomes a place of pilgrimage, a holy place for understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is therefore the duty of everyone to associate with the pure devotee and thus attain freedom from material contamination. Everyone should take advantage of the wandering devotees whose only business is to deliver conditioned souls from the clutches of Maya. Om Tat Sat, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, as Srila Prabhupada himself is writing in this purport, that the pure devotee wanders throughout the world simply to purify the place. So, today we will discuss briefly about some of the beautiful pastimes of Srila Prabhupada when he was traveling to various cities in the United States of America. Last time, Swarna Gaurari Prabhu started this particular chapter and he covered till Srila Prabhupada's activities in Chicago in the year 1975. And from Chicago, Srila Prabhupada next traveled to, before that, we see in Srila Prabhupada's efforts to establish Krishna consciousness throughout the world, he was a very tireless traveler. He was constantly traveling. In fact, within a span of 12 years, he circled the globe 14 times. only to purify each and every continent, to purify each and every country, to purify each and every town, and then to purify each and every village, and to purify each and every person that he was coming in contact with. And eventually, every person that would come in contact with his sincere followers. So next, from Chicago, Srila Prabhupada traveled to Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. It's a very, very important city in the United States, very closely connected to the civil war in the US and the United States getting its independence from the British rule. So in Philadelphia, Srila Prabhupada continued with the theme of addressing the idea of women's liberation. That is because that was a very prominent concept, like a buzzword in the US at that time. And Prabhupada was not initiating those topics on his own, but then the people that he would be addressing, mostly press people, they would ask questions related to the topic. So Srila Prabhupada, once again, just like he did in Chicago, very emphatically in Philadelphia also established that there is no discrimination based on spiritual platform within ISKCON, and women's equality on the material platform will only lead to exploitation of women by unscrupulous men. And Srila Prabhupada shared with his audience that if anybody wants to see everyone equally, treat everyone equally, then they have to come to the spiritual platform, which is Krishna consciousness. That is the only way in which everybody can be equal, because outside of Krishna consciousness, the whole operation of this world is all based on differences. So it is impossible for anybody to go to overlook differences, and without being situated in the platform of Krishna consciousness. So all the efforts that various world leaders are putting to attain equality, equanimity among their people is only possible by establishing themselves and also their followers in Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada, in fact, at this point in time, he was little skeptical, maybe I should say, that about this same topic coming again and again. While traveling with Brahmanand Prabhu, he even mentioned, oh, again, the same topic came. Did I answer it properly? And Brahmanand Prabhu replied, yes, Srila Prabhupada, it was perfectly well. So Srila Prabhupada was very concerned that people really understand his teaching and start following instead of raising the same questions again and again. So, and then later on in the temple, when Srila Prabhupada was receiving guests and visitors, some scholars from the nearby Temple University came. At that time, the temple president in Philadelphia was His Grace Ravindra Swarup Prabhu, and he was himself doctorate in philosophy. So he had a very close contact with professors and scholars from the university there. So he had invited, and in fact, he mentioned that he took some classes from one Swami Nikhilananda shortly after Srila Prabhupada addressed a group of audience in the Temple University. Ravindra Swarup Prabhu did not get to hear Prabhupada during his college days, but he was there a little later. And Ravindra Swarup Prabhu was sharing with Srila Prabhupada that how Swami Nikhilananda was trying to teach Vedanta. Here, when Ravindra Swarup Prabhu mentioned that, Prabhupada asked Prabhuji, so what is Vedanta? And so Ravindra Swarup Prabhu did not have an answer. Prabhupada said, Veda means knowledge, Anta means end. The end of knowledge, the conclusion of all knowledge. And Prabhupada answered that the conclusion of all knowledge is Krishna, to understand Krishna. And Ravindra Swarup Prabhu shared that many students, including him, have taken hours and hours of classes on Vedanta by Swami Nikhilananda, but they never got any conclusive answer about what is Vedanta. It was all so many various kinds of information which was quite displaced from the idea of Vedanta. And shortly thereafter, Prabhupada received some visitors, and one second. Yeah. Then Srila Prabhupada was traveling from the temple to one park where he was going to take a walk. He came across a motor junkyard. At that point in time, American economy was booming with automotive industry. We will later on discuss more about that when we talk about Detroit. And Prabhupada came across one motor junkyard where old cars were all smashed, broken into pieces. Prabhupada made a comment that this is your civilization, simply breaking and building. There is no question about inquiring about permanent nature of the soul. So everybody is so focused about, when something goes wrong, just apply a temporary quick fix solution, then, move on. So nobody was asking about any permanent solution. Devotees asked Srila Prabhupada about how they should deal with skepticism within oneself, skepticism and doubt or disappointment, because we hear about Krishna consciousness being able to offer us, the ultimate extraordinary transcendental happiness. But many times we don't feel that kind of creates disappointment within our hearts. And we have a sense of skepticism in our heart, saying, is Krishna consciousness really going to work or no? How do I move this? Okay. So Srila Prabhupada answered that question by stating that the living entity, the spirit soul, is by nature happy. There is no question of disappointment. You see Krishna's picture anywhere, how happy they are. The gopis are happy, the cowherd boys are happy, Krishna is happy, simply happiness. Where is disappointment? So you come to that platform, and then you will also be happy. Come to Krishna, come and dance with Krishna, eat with Krishna. That is the information we are giving. What is the question of disappointment? Come to Krishna. Krishna therefore personally comes to show how happy he is in Vrindavana, and he is inviting, come to me. So Srila Prabhupada here very clearly addresses, this particular question of skepticism. It's not skepticism, scholarly skepticism, where people question the philosophical principles. But here, this is the skepticism within the heart of devotees that he is addressing, where we simply have to listen to Krishna's invitation that go to Krishna, place ourselves very close to Krishna's teachings, Krishna's activities, his pastimes, and following in the footsteps of the spiritual master. Then there is simply happiness. There is nothing else other than happiness. That's the way to deal with skepticism. So later on in Philadelphia, Srila Prabhupada attended the famous Philadelphia Rath Yatra. So while addressing the gathering of audience in the Rath Yatra, Srila Prabhupada primarily focused on the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, how the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is transcendental benediction from the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada stated, quote, "Our only means is chanting Hare Krishna, and these thousands of men are following simply by chanting Hare Krishna mantra." So you can understand what is the potency of this Hare Krishna mantra. We did not pay you, ladies and gentlemen, anything to follow us, but we simply chant Hare Krishna. So it is very potent. You will never feel tired chanting Hare Krishna. You see, practically, you can go on chanting 24 hours. You will never feel tired. Therefore, it is said, Golokir Premadan. This chanting vibration is coming from the spiritual world. And when after the Rath Yatra, when Prabhupada was addressing some news people, they raised this question of why the devotees were worshipping Srila Prabhupada as if he was God. Why he was being offered very expensive offerings like fancy cars for travel and other luxuries. Srila Prabhupada very boldly replied that, quote, "They are still deficient. If God comes to your home, you will bring him an ordinary motor car, or would you arrange for a golden car? So your point is that they offer me a nice motor car, but I say it is not sufficient. They are still lacking to treat him as God. Be practical. So this was how Srila Prabhupada was, even though he was accepting the humble offerings of luxuries from his disciples, he was always seeing it as something that is being offered to Krishna. He saw himself as only a representative of Krishna, accepting those offerings on behalf of Krishna. And back in the temple, from the Temple University of Philadelphia, Srila Prabhupada received a guest named Dr. Yogesh Patel. He was a professor of Hinduism. And so he came and offered his respects to Srila Prabhupada and introduced himself as a professor of Hinduism. And then Prabhupada asked him, "Oh, you're a professor of Hinduism? Tell me, what is Hinduism?" And Dr. Patel, he replied, "I don't know. You tell me what is Hinduism." And Srila Prabhupada immediately asked, "You don't know? You're the professor of Hinduism, you don't know?" Now Prabhupada then turned to Swarup Damodar Maharaj that was sitting there. So see, this is Dr. Swarup Damodar. He is also a PhD. We'll take his opinion. What do you say? He says he's a professor of Hinduism and he doesn't know what is Hinduism. What do you say? What is your opinion? Swarup Damodar Maharaj said, he's a cheater, Srila Prabhupada. That is called a cheater. And Prabhupada turned back to Dr. Patel and said, "See, he also agrees. He says that you are a cheater. How can you be a professor of something that you don't even know?" And Dr. Patel tried to defend, and then Prabhupada very severely chastised him. And eventually, devotees had to ask Dr. Patel to get up and leave. Otherwise, the way he was becoming very defensive. And Dr. Patel asked Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, "Okay, I accept. I don't know. Then you teach me." He was very disrespectfully demanding. Prabhupada told him, "This is not how I teach. This is not how you accept a guru. You cannot order a guru to give you shiksha. You have to surrender your life to the spiritual master. Only then you will receive that knowledge." At this point in time, Dr. Patel was asked to leave. So, and after that, some time, Prabhupada was he was in a very grave mood. But then a few minutes later, when Dr. Hopkins came, he was also a professor of religion or philosophy, and his mood was completely different from that of Dr. Patel. And he was very humbly inquiring about various aspects of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. One prominent point that was discussed at that time was Dr. Hopkins asked if someone was going to collect a very small section of your work. He asked Srila Prabhupada, "Say one or two verses, which would you want them to collect?" Prabhupada replied, "That is stated in two verses." Prabhupada replied, "Dharmasya apavargasya." In that verse, Srila Prabhupada is translating and explaining in the purport how the religious duties, all kinds of dharmic duties, all economic activities have to be directed towards development of Krishna consciousness. Because America was a booming economic hub of the world, Srila Prabhupada was trying to impress upon the scholars of that country that all that effort, all that economic development has to be directed towards understanding one's true self. And later on, Dr. Hopkins also asked questions about the position of Lord Shiva and the Saint Tukaram, Shankaracharya, and impersonalism, and later on Aurobindo also. And Srila Prabhupada stated his understanding of Aurobindo, that he was a sincere seeker, but he did not take shelter of a spiritual master. He was trying to realize the truth by himself. So he emphasized the importance of accepting a spiritual master in disciplic succession. So there, Prabhupada's visit to Philadelphia concluded, and the next day, the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper published an article summarizing Srila Prabhupada's activities in Philadelphia. And that year, with the caption, "The high-flying guru of Hare Krishna leaves town with a humble suggestion, try chanting." So the fundamental theme of Srila Prabhupada's visit in Philadelphia that year was he was encouraging everyone to take to the process of chanting Hare Krishna. The next slide. From Srila Prabhupada, from San Francisco, he took a flight, and from Philadelphia, he took a flight to San Francisco. In that flight, Srila Prabhupada encountered a very interesting person, and this person came out of the cockpit, and he came and greeted Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada asked him, "Oh, are you the pilot?" He said, "No, I'm a flight supervisor, and may I ask some questions, philosophical questions?" And Srila Prabhupada asked his servant who was sitting right next to him to make place for him. And this person sat next to Srila Prabhupada, and he asked various questions. And he was particularly interested to know about the position of evil. Because in Christian philosophy, evil is anti-God. So he was asking Srila Prabhupada, if everything comes from God, then where does evil come from? How can evil come from God? And Srila Prabhupada said, evil also comes from God. And he explained that evil is simply forgetfulness of God. When somebody is forgetful of God, when somebody is not following the instructions of God in their life, then that is what is evil. And understanding that precious moment, that person was very humbly asking questions about the nature of soul and the duties of humanity, etc. And later on, he excused himself. And when he was asking questions to Srila Prabhupada wanted to show some reference to that person. So he asked his servant, "Give me a copy of the Bhagavad Gita." And the devotees who were there, including a servant, they were looking at each other, and they were looking for a copy of Bhagavad Gita in their bags, but nobody had a copy of Bhagavad Gita. So anyway, Prabhupada was not very happy about it. After this guest left, Srila Prabhupada told the devotees that we should always carry a copy of the Bhagavad Gita and the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it was very important. Prabhupada wanted to make sure that we carry some basic books with us whenever we are going to meet guests, so we can take references from the books, and whatever we share with them is very, very authentic, not something that we just not that they might think that we are just saying from our mind, but when we present it based on the books, then it becomes very, very authentic. Then in San Francisco, Srila Prabhupada went to Berkeley, and Berkeley is a very big university town, college town, and there Srila Prabhupada, this college students at that point in time, they were very, very, what can we say, rebellious about the authority. So many protests, this and that. That was kind of the mood in most of the colleges and the student circles at that time. So any authority the students wanted to question. Here Srila Prabhupada, Paramahamsa Acharya, as the guru of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, he was teaching Krishna consciousness. But then many students would raise questions about why there is so much worship of you by your followers. And Srila Prabhupada replied, a guru's business is to protect the subordinate disciples from fall down. Just like I'm traveling all over the world twice, thrice in a year, my duty is to see that my disciples who have accepted me as guru may not fall down. That is my anxiety. Srila Prabhupada, he explained that because he has taken the responsibility of protecting his disciples on behalf of Krishna, and on behalf of Krishna, the disciples must offer respects and offerings to the spiritual master. The same thing that that was raised in Philadelphia also. And then Srila Prabhupada taught that there were many so-called gurus who would just take some money and give mantras. And Srila Prabhupada said, simply take this mantra and give me $125. They will like. So I would have collected millions of dollars if I would have cheated like that. But I do not want that. I want one student who follows my instructions. I don't want millions. Ekas chandrastamo hantina tara sahasraha. If there is one moon in the sky, that is sufficient for illumination. There is no need of millions of stars. My position is that I want to see that at least one disciple has become a pure devotee. Of course, I have got many sincere and pure devotees. That is my good luck. Srila Prabhupada was trying to address this idea that people were thinking that Prabhupada was trying to gather more and more followers. No, he was only concerned about one pure devotee, but then he was very happy that he had many pure devotees as sincere disciples. And Srila Prabhupada did not consider that as his achievement. He was only considering that as his good luck. And in a press conference later on, many questions were raised. One objection that was raised by some of the press people was that the devotees of Krishna consciousness movement were, creating lots of disturbance. Some noise. Creating disturbance in the airport by trying to distribute literature. And Prabhupada immediately replied, the airport itself is a disturbance. There is so much noise and accidents, and devotees were really impressed by that immediate retort by Srila Prabhupada to the news people. And Prabhupada then explained that if we are distributing a lot of literature, people are buying. If they are feeling disturbed, then why are they paying for the book? And Srila Prabhupada told them that we will bring all our books here, and you can see it yourself that there is so much good in that book. Any page you open, you will find something good in that. So later on, some reporters asked Srila Prabhupada, what will happen to the Hare Krishna movement in the United States when you die? And Prabhupada said boldly, I will never die. I shall live from my books, and you will utilize. So Steven Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada also received some guests. Swami Sushil, Swami Chidananda, and Yogi Bhajan, they visited Srila Prabhupada. They had a discussion about a variety of topics, and they were organizing various conferences and meetings. They were inviting Srila Prabhupada to a conference about world unity. Srila Prabhupada very instantly told them that there is not going to be any unity because their efforts were very, very external. It is not touching the core defects of the society. And but he was, while very strongly and boldly criticizing or teaching them, pointing out the defects in their approach, Srila Prabhupada was very, very cordial, very friendly, and very respectful to them. And later on they replied that they appreciated Srila Prabhupada, and they said that one of them said, what strikes me is that you don't compromise anywhere. So that was Srila Prabhupada's trademark. He did not compromise anywhere in his teachings, in his preaching, in his activities. There was no compromise. And Srila Prabhupada expected his followers also not to practice the same way. Shortly thereafter, Srila Prabhupada attended the famous San Francisco Rath Yatra. And from there, he traveled on to Los Angeles. Srila Prabhupada had established Los Angeles as his international headquarters at that time. And then once Mayapur was established, then later on LA became the headquarters for the Western world. And then Mayapur is our international headquarters now. So Srila Prabhupada there, he spent quite some time. And he, in fact, the BBT for North America was also located in Los Angeles. One prominent pastime that happened at that time in LA was Srila Prabhupada asked the devotees to publish 17 volumes of the Chaitanya Charitamrita in just 2 months. In fact, this particular pastime of Srila Prabhupada and his devotees itself can be covered in 1 or 2 hours, but I'll just briefly mention. And Srila Prabhupada, at that time, the manager of BBT was Rameshwar Prabhu, and he was saying that it is impossible. We cannot produce 17 books in 2 months. He said he can produce maybe 2 books in 2 months. Prabhupada would not leave. He insisted that all 17. Then Rameshwar Prabhu said some more number, maybe 8 books. But finally, Prabhupada said, you do it. And Prabhupada said, I will supply all the translations and you had to publish. And Rameshwar Prabhu, with the support of Radha Vallabh Prabhu, they accepted this challenge from Srila Prabhupada, and they eventually, within 2 months, they produced all 17 volumes. They made a lot of reorganization in the operation of the BBT. They brought in devotees, translators, artists, proofreaders from various parts of the country, and they all came. In fact, the publication work was going on 24/7, all day and all night. Sometimes one devotee would be working on a particular section of the publication, either proofreading or making illustrations, and then they would just fall asleep, not being able to stay awake any longer. And then after a few hours of rest, when they wake up, somebody else would have made some progress on their work. So there was nobody could claim any part of the work as their own, because so many devotees were working on each and every aspect of that production. So we will not be able to go into the details of that pastime, because that's such an elaborate pastime, and so we will move on. So in LA, this is the one, 17 volumes in 2 months. From there, Srila Prabhupada went to Laguna Beach. He spent a few days there. One prominent thing that happened there was one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, Rishi Das, after some time of spending staying in ISKCON, he had left, and then he came back to just pay a casual, friendly visit to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada received him like his loving son who was lost and who just came back. And Prabhupada was inquiring about his well-being, and he didn't look like he was following any of the principles of Krishna consciousness. And he told Srila Prabhupada that I think I have more freedom now. At that point in time, Srila Prabhupada really wanted to help him. So he asked him, you have freedom? Are you free? Are you completely free? Are you free to avoid growing old? Are you free to avoid disease? Are you free to avoid death? And Rishi Prabhu at that time was trying to avoid these questions from Srila Prabhupada. He knows he wouldn't have answers to these questions, because he had a very good understanding of philosophy, but somehow he got distracted. And when some guests, came Laguna Beach to meet Srila Prabhupada, he was still there, and then immediately Prabhupada turned to them and asked, he says he is free now. What is your opinion? Is he free to avoid old age, disease and death? And or is any of you free to avoid old age, disease and death? They all said, no, none of us are free. We have to, face that. So then Rishi Prabhu, he took his leave. Prabhupada continued conversation with his guests. And from Laguna Beach, he went to San Diego. And San Diego also was an epicenter of the hippie movement at that time. So there was lots of questions about the freedom, the free thought, use of drugs, and unlimited sexual relationships. So Srila Prabhupada very strongly addressed and explained the importance of regulated sex life and the importance of producing Krishna conscious children, how the absence of following such principles will cause only chaos in the society. So please allow me to move fast. I'm only addressing some prominent ideas, because I want to complete this particular chapter and cover small sections from the next chapter also, the part 2 also. So, there in San Diego, Srila Prabhupada spoke very strongly, giving the devotees a vision of a powerful America leading the world in Krishna consciousness. And this stirred within them hopes for a pure patriotism, such as the ancient Vedic culture, when the world had been ruled by God-conscious leaders. Satsarup Maharaj writes in the book. There, Srila Prabhupada was instructing, because San Diego is also very popular, it's known for the naval base. Military activities are very strong. America's naval power is distributed in different places, but San Diego Navy base is very famous, because from there, the Hawaii Navy base is connected and it's supported the various war activities were there. So Srila Prabhupada was talking about how America being a very strong country and they should follow Krishna consciousness. That way, that he was urging the devotees to show their patriotism by making America a very, very Krishna conscious country, and the rest of the world will follow. Because that's what America was trying to do, but not in Krishna consciousness. In economic and military power, America was trying to make the rest of the world follow them. Here, Srila Prabhupada was asking the devotees to do that using the principle of Krishna consciousness, based on the principles of Krishna consciousness. And later on in a morning walk, when devotees came across somebody who was standing on their head in a park, devotees asked, is he some kind of a yogi? Prabhupada said, yeah, he is practicing some yoga. It is good for health. And then when they heard Prabhupada's surprising praise of Hatha Yoga, devotee asked the inevitable question, so if we have time, can we do that? And Prabhupada took some time to answer, because he knew he was addressing a topic which is very, very sensitive. When they came to the car, he chuckled, and he was aware that he was being baited with a controversial question. So he said, just Hare Krishna, and he said, not required, about practicing Hatha Yoga. From San Diego, Prabhupada came to Dallas, and Dallas was a very, very active center of ISKCON at that time, primarily housing the ISKCON Gurukula. The children of the devotees in various parts of the country and outside the US also were there in the Gurukula in Dallas. Srila Prabhupada gave lots of instructions about how to take care of children in Krishna consciousness, how they should be educated, they should be taught Krishna conscious values, and lots of instructions he gave to the devotees of Gurukula. Later on, while reading Krishna book with some devotees, Brahmanand Prabhu was reading Krishna book, and Prabhupada had mentioned a line that when Rukmini Devi was riding the chariot when Krishna was fighting with the rebellious kings there. And the devotees are, because we always think that Rukmini Devi is very, very mild and very docile, and Satyabhama is very active and very so devotees, when they expressed this idea that we never heard of Rukmini Devi taking reins, we never thought of her in that way. Srila Prabhupada said, yes, that is true. And at that time, also in India, Srimati Indira Gandhi had announced emergency. There were political turmoil in India, so and that news was also catching headlines in the US. So press people were asking questions to Srila Prabhupada about what his opinion was about Indira Gandhi's policies, and Srila Prabhupada did not want to talk about it. Of course, he mentioned a few things about how due to the lack of strong men in politics, one woman is leading the country, and he also was not appreciative of many of her policies, but he didn't want to mention anything because he didn't want to compromise the activities of ISKCON in India, and also he was trying to get permanent visas to many of his devotees in India. Here there's a picture of some of his disciples meeting with the Prime Minister, Srimati Indira Gandhi at that time. So from Dallas, Srila Prabhupada went to New Orleans. And New Orleans, there was a small temple, but then the devotees there had obtained a huge farm. And while visiting the farm, Srila Prabhupada gave extensive instructions about simple living, farm communities, varnashram, etc. He was teaching them. He was sharing with them what all to do in a farm, how to maintain cows, how to engage the bulls, and whether to use or not use farm equipment, and how to maintain the farm equipment. So a lot of such details Srila Prabhupada shared with them. Those chapters are very, very instructive if anybody is interested to learn more about maintaining farm communities in Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna consciousness is not something that is just demonstrative. We are not practicing Krishna consciousness just to show that we are capable of doing something. The whole fundamental principle of Krishna consciousness is doing paropkar, is helping others. And Srila Prabhupada is in fact the highest paropakari. He spent sleepless nights translating and writing purports to the scriptures, because of which the paropkar that he did and he still is doing through his books, So in our efforts to follow in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, following his teachings, we should also try to keep this idea of trying to be paropakaris. In that farm, in the Mississippi farm, when Srila Prabhupada was talking to Harikesh Prabhu, and he was saying that he's taking about 2 to 2.5 hours to cook. Srila Prabhupada said, "Oh, that is a lot of time that you are taking. I will just do it in 1 hour and I'll show you." Srila Prabhupada got up, removed his kurta, he went to the kitchen, and he step by step, these details are there in lilamritha, we can read. And within 1 hour, he finished cooking a meal of 6 or 7 items. So Srila Prabhupada was teaching his followers not just some philosophy. He was also teaching highly practical aspects, like how efficiently and quickly making a meal for oneself, for a small group. That's how wide range to Srila Prabhupada's teachings to his followers. And then from New Orleans, Mississippi, Srila Prabhupada came to Detroit. If all of you would excuse me, I'm going to spend a little extra time just speaking about Detroit. Detroit at that time was the economic hub of America, because all automotive companies, car manufacturing companies were all situated there. And this was, in fact, the second temple in Detroit. Before this, there was just a small house where only few sannyasis, leading preachers were there. And there were big colleges, so extensive preaching activities happened. A lot of devotees joined. Some of our powerful leaders in our society, like His Holiness Indradumna Swami Maharaj, they also joined ISKCON in Detroit. So this is the second temple. But as we see in this picture, there were so many devotees staying in the temple. And so the temple was like houseful, it was overfull. There was not enough place for devotees to be accommodated. So they were looking for a much bigger building for temple. Detroit, we cannot talk about Detroit without talking about this great Amrish Prabhu. Amrish Prabhu, Alfred Ford, he also hails from Detroit. He was the great grandson of Ford, who established the Ford Motor Company. And Amrish Prabhu, he came in contact with devotees in somewhere, I think in Hawaii, and he became a devotee. He took up, later on, he took Diksha also from Srila Prabhupada. There's a picture of, I think that is Amrish Prabhu accepting Diksha from Srila Prabhupada. And so he came back to Detroit when Prabhupada came to Detroit, and Satsvarup Maharaj writes that he brought his white Lincoln Continental limousine. It's a very, very luxurious car. And not only that, he brought his car like a menial servant, he was opening the door like a chauffeur, he was opening the door for Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was very pleased with Amrish Prabhu. And so later on, when devotees mentioned to Srila Prabhupada about they're looking for a larger building for the temple, and they came across one huge building that they wanted Srila Prabhupada to see, because that mansion was quite big. And some devotees thought that it is not practical to run a temple from there, and some devotees thought it is good. And so they wanted Srila Prabhupada to come and take a look at it. So before going to that particular pastime, I want to mention here about two personalities here, You see on the left side, we see the founder of Ford Motor Company. On the right side, you see Walter Reuther. I want to mention about Walter Reuther because he was the leader of the labor union. Detroit was an industrial town. There are a lot of factories, car manufacturing factories. When there are factories, there's workforce, there is labor, and there were unions. And so there's always conflict between labor unions and the industrialists. So this Walter Reuther was was very powerful labor union leader. There was so much conflict. In the middle picture, you see on the left side Walter Reuther being beaten up by the police, beaten up by the people arranged by the industrialists because he was making so many demands for the welfare of the labor. So basically, Ford and Reuther's they were almost like enemies in the Detroit psychology. But the amazing thing that happened was a descendant of Ford, Ambarish Prabhu, was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and the daughter of Walter Reuther, Lekha Shravanti Mataji, was also a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Both of them were serving Srila Prabhupada together cooperatively in ISKCON Detroit. So we will see that more details about that in a moment. This is Ambarish Prabhu on the left, and Lekha Shravanti Mataji was the daughter of Walter Reuther. In fact, it was very, very unlikely for the members of these two families to come together for any purpose, any cause. They were like bitter enemies in the economic and industrial circles. So because of this, the Srila Prabhupada's movement in Detroit was attracting a lot of media attention, because everybody was curious, how come somebody from the Ford family and somebody from the Reuther family are working together? It was because they're supposed to be inimical to each other. So this is the Fisher Mansion, the building that the devotees were considering. So Srila Prabhupada, he took a tour of the mansion, and in fact, before telling a few details about what happened, what transpired in the tour, I want to mention a little bit about the mansion. This person is Lawrence Fisher, and he was the president of the Cadillac Fisher Body Division. Now, the Cadillac luxury cars that General Motors is still making now, the body was being made by Fisher Body Corporation, and he was the founder of that. And he built this mansion, and this mansion was a very, very exquisitely built. He was a multi-billionaire at that time. And some details about the mansion. I took these slides from a stock that I had, so I'm just going to quickly go through these things. This is the landscape. This was built in the 1928, and the design was approved in 1928. So that mansion is little over 100 years old. It is still standing. And this is in fact a picture of the Fisher Mansion after it was being converted into a temple. We can see the size. It was about 22 or 23,000 square feet, just the building itself. And the whole land, the property is about 3 acres. Right behind the building, there is a water canal which connects to a river called Detroit River, which connects Lake St. Clair and Lake Erie. Those are 2 big lakes, almost like ocean. Now I have seen them. And we will see some more pictures of this temple. And this is little in the daytime, and there's lotus ponds, and we will see some interiors of the Fisher Mansion also. At that time, it cost $2 million to build in the 1920s. Here in this slide, it says today it would be $25 million, but this is also late because these slides were put together in the 80s. So now it could be maybe $100 million or something. About 4 kilograms of silver and 2 kilograms of gold and gold leaf are used in the mansion. Anyway, so before going on to that, I want to mention that when Srila Prabhupada was taking a tour of that building, he started smiling, looking at the beautiful ornate embellishments in the building, and he was appreciating so many things. In fact, as he was saying that, oh, this is so nice, that is so beautiful, this is so exquisite, the person, the seller, he was getting very excited. He said, yeah, he's going to sell it for a very good price. And later on, Srila Prabhupada asked, after taking the tour, they sat down and they just to negotiate. And the seller, in fact, Srila Prabhupada, excuse me, some disturbance in the morning here. So Srila Prabhupada was asking, so how much are you asking? And he was asking for $350,000. And Prabhupada said, privately to the devotees, he said, actually each and every room in that mansion is worth that much. But to the person who was trying to sell, Srila Prabhupada said that it's a very nice building, and but this building is fit for kings, but we are beggars. You should just give this as a donation. And when Prabhupada mentioned this, the seller was completely shocked. He was like frozen. He didn't know what to say. And devotees who were standing with Srila Prabhupada, they were also feeling so awkward. How can somebody ask such a building for free as donation? But then Srila Prabhupada said, understanding the unease in the situation, he said, okay, we will give $300,000 cash. And the seller said, I will need some time to think about it. And so then devotees were wondering, who has the $300,000? We don't have $300,000. And Srila Prabhupada just, he was very confident. And then they left. And Srila Prabhupada, he said, later on in the temple, Srila Prabhupada called for Ambarish Prabhu and Lekashravanti Mataji, and he asked them if they could pay for the temple. And Lekashravanti Mataji, actually her father had recently passed away and she had inherited family wealth of about $125,000. And Ambarish Prabhu said he will pay the rest. So both of them together, they paid for this, and then the sale was completed. In fact, the person who sold, he later on realized that this property is so much more worth, and he did not get a good price. And few days after the sale was completed and the devotees took possession of the property, he came in the early in the evening when it was about to be night, dark. Then he came and started removing so many fittings from the mansion because he just wanted to take some more value for the sale that went through, because he thought he lost a lot of money. And actually, it so happened, little more history about this mansion was Lawrence Fisher, who built the mansion, and he did not have any children. So after he died, after his wife also died, it went to charity. And the charitable company, they could not maintain and pay the property taxes for this expensive building because it was very difficult to maintain. And then because they were not even paying the due government taxes, the municipality took over the mansion, and they took possession of the mansion, and they did not know how to maintain. They did not know what to do. It was just becoming a burden, and they just auctioned it. And somebody bought it in auction for whatever amount, we do not know. And probably that was the person who sold it to Srila Prabhupada for $300,000. So, okay, since we mentioned about the beauty of this building, I just want to show you a few things about those things. Some chandeliers. The orange color face is the face of Neptune. Right behind this wall, there is a tank, and which used to be filled with champagne. When Lawrence Fisher would invite guests for parties, continuously champagne would be flowing from a little tube you can see in the mouth of this face. And the guests can come and just fill up their cups with champagne. And the tanks and all are still there, but they're not functional. The pumps are all broken. And this is the reception area, and the ceiling is basically hand carved Spanish oak. It took 2 years to carve. You can see in this picture on the top, you can see the whole ceiling thing is hand carved, and they're very precious tiles and marbles on the floor. I will just walk you through some of these slides fairly quickly, so you can get a glimpse of that. By Krishna's mercy, I happened to spend good amount of time trying to do some seva in the temple, so I'm spending a little more time here. So from the foyer entrance, this is the see, these are all the 3D arts. Fisher brought artists from all over the world, various parts of Europe, to build that. This chandelier is very, very unique. This chandelier is so heavy, it would take 7 or 8 people to lift it and mount it. Extremely ornate, very heavy metal used in that. Going upstairs, and this is the upstairs foyer, and from there lots of details are there. Stained glass windows, Spanish style gold leaf on the roof, on the ceiling. And this is the living room. Before this was converted by devotees that was suitable for. This is how it was when the mansion was taken possession of. Extremely ornate, expensive rugs. And this was Fisher's dining room, which was later converted into Govinda's restaurant. And each and every embellishment on the ceilings, on the corners, are very meticulously done. And this is a water fountain. There are 2 such water fountains in the restaurant. And there are puabit tiles, each individual tiles that are laid on the wall behind. Even after almost 100 years, these tiles brilliantly shine. There is no fading. They're like very high quality ornate tiles. This was the dining room before it was converted into a restaurant by the devotees. Fisher's dining room with the high seat chair furniture. Everything was there, and the walls are laid with oak wood, fully wooden walls. And this was the library of Fisher, and there's a fireplace, and you can see the ceiling also is fully made of hand carved wood. And there's a little door on the right side. You see that door opens to an underground tunnel that goes to a indoor swimming pool that we will see in another picture later on. So in winter, Detroit is a very cold place. There will be a lot of snow. So in winters, Fisher would use this underground tunnel to go to the indoor heated swimming pool. Even though there is snow all around, that big swimming pool would be heated with warm water. And the walls of this room are made of leather, which was painted over, hand painted designs on leather, which is laid on the wall. This is the library, like how it was. And then right next to the library, there's the living room. You see on the columns on the left hand top, ceiling in manner of Swiss chalet. Some of these columns, he brought it from some old castles in Europe. And this particular door arch on the right side is so extremely intricately carved. And, in fact, many art collectors came and asked for it when the temple was in a lot of financial stress long time ago. They came and asked for just that arch for $1 million. But of course, this is something that Srila Prabhupada bought for the temple, so it was not going to be spared. And this was the living room, converted later on by devotees for Krishna conscious purposes. It's a big, huge one, opening into a rose garden on the left side, and the doors open to a balcony on the back side overlooking the water canal. And this is the living room, how it was before it was converted. On the left side, the big arch I was talking about, $1 million arch, the wooden arch, that's the one. And on the other side of that arch door, there is a music room, which we will see. And so for that time, for the 1920s, that music room was very, very high tech. So this is the music room, acoustically made and very less reverberation there, wall mounted, ceiling mounted speakers there. And this was after the furnishings were removed. But this original piano that was there, that was retained, it was not working even when I was there. It's a very, very old style piano. And this is how the music room was when the building was taken over. We can imagine the amount of wealth that is there in this building, all that Srila Prabhupada bought just for $300,000. It is unbelievable. And finally, this was the ballroom. Lawrence Fisher would bring his guests for ball dance and parties here. And when Srila Prabhupada came into the ballroom, he immediately understood that this building has been kept by Lord Krishna just for the devotees, because this ballroom had 3 beautiful archways like this. You can see the down. It's perfectly suitable for the altar. On the left side, there is Shishi Gaurnitai and the deities of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The middle, we have the deities of Shishi Radha Kunj Bihari. The right, we have deities of Jagannath Baldev Subhadra. This picture is taken from a balcony on the back side. There's a balcony on the other side also above the deities, which is Tulsi Garden, and behind that there is a water canal. And this is how the ballroom was when it was acquired. And the 3 arches that we see are the deity altars now. And these are Fisher's bedroom. The bedroom, how it was. And this was Fisher's, those were small bedrooms. This is the master bedroom's bathroom. Srila Prabhupada actually stayed in this bedroom. He used these washrooms when he was staying there on 2 visits. And this washroom, this bathroom in the master bedroom itself is like a palace. And this was Srila Prabhupada's bedroom. The master bedroom, Prabhupada stayed in this bedroom. In fact, this is the room in which Srila Prabhupada would visit, receive guests. And this is the room right behind on the left hand bottom corner is Prabhupada's desk, the corner of which we can see. Sitting at the desk, Srila Prabhupada asked Ambarish Prabhu if he will be able to build the temple of the Vedic planetarium. And so this is the room where Prabhupada gave that instruction to Ambarish Prabhu about the TOVP, which Ambarish Prabhu is very wonderfully executing now. This is Srila Prabhupada's bed. This was how it was before devotees moved in. Many of these furnishings were moved out. And this was the game room, which later on got converted into gift room, gift shop. This was the game room, which is now gift shop. Snooker table and other tables are there. And this was the closed swimming pool. On the left hand side, the entrance is there. You go a little further. This has been closed down because it's impossible to maintain a swimming pool like this. So it is completely closed down. The swimming pool got filled up and a rose garden has been laid above this. That time, actually, swimming pool was there. It was not closed when I went there, but then lots of safety concerns were there. So water got pumped out, everything got filled up. So it was an underground tunnel. The underground tunnel also collapsed. So there was no point in keeping this. So it's all filled up. And in fact, the water canal behind on the left-hand side, you see the boat can come inside. Some of us have drive-in garages. We take our cars inside the house. Fisher would take his boat inside the house. So because Detroit is a riverfront city. And this is the view from the back side, from the water canal side. Now the water canal also been closed because it's very difficult to maintain when the water damages the building. So it's been pushed out, a floor laid out. So these are the deities housed there, the temple now, Detroit. And this is an evening view of the temple. So there's one picture of that expensive chandelier and a front view. There's a museum also, the first American Transcendental Exhibition. There are only two such museums in the world. One is in Los Angeles Temple, the other one is in Detroit Temple. And they're replica, the dioramas are almost replicas. Many of us may be familiar with the calendar that we had many years ago that had a picture of these deities, these dioramas, and they are in Detroit. Now, that's a multimedia exhibition with a big theater with about 40 seating, fully air conditioned with motorized stage rotation, and it's a very, very extensively made beautiful dioramas depicting the philosophy and pastimes of Krishna and Krishna consciousness. This is the temple hall now. Some of the embellishments. And Srila Prabhupada in Detroit, he's coming to take a look at the bus party. And this picture also is taken right in front of the temple in Detroit. And this is Ambarish Prabhu's parents paying a visit to the temple. And this is Srila Prabhupada sitting in the temple hall receiving Guru Puja, right opposite to the deities. And here Srila Prabhupada sitting upstairs receiving guests near the Rose Garden. And this is Shri Radha Kunj Bihari in Detroit. So Srila Prabhupada in his extensive travels at this point in time, he is in Detroit. From here, he will go to Toronto and continue his travels and his various pastimes. It's already past time, so I would like to stop here. So thank you so much for allowing me to take some extra time to share with you some aspects of the Detroit temple. I'm personally connected, so I took the liberty to share. Thank you so much. If anybody has any comments.
Thank you, Prabhuji. It was really wonderful at the end. It was nectarian to see that very, very beautiful palace for Lord Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. And devotees lines are unmuted.
Amazing, Prabhu. Well, it is still functioning and all that in the place.
Yes, Mataji. Temple is still running.
God willing, we should go and see.
Yeah.
Thanks, Prabhu, for the personal tour. Very beautiful.
Thank you,
I think even if we go, we would not experience it like this.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
I am having fond memories. I used to give tours to guests personally there, so now I'm doing a virtual
I can see
tour.
that. All the details. Very nice.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Gokulchandra Prabhu, Rangaraj Krishna Das here, beautifully described. So, it's very, very beautifully taken, photographed, and described, Prabhu. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Gokulchandra Prabhu. Thank you very much for a wonderful
Thank you,
walk.
Prabhuji.
Prabhupada's time in the US and also especially in the Detroit temple. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Now we can end the class, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Because there are no other comments. We'll end the class with Vaishnava.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Patitranam Pavanebhyo
Vaishnava, Namo Namo.
Anam Vaishnava Srila Prabhupada.